Hey guys, Henning and Morten from FlippedNormals here. In this video, we are going to take a look at two portfolios and we're going to give it a nice review. Or specifically, we're looking at two pieces from two portfolios. We're looking at portfolios from Theodore and from Wojciech, which hopefully that is how you pronounce it. So first off, let's have a look at this guy here. This is a piece which looks really cool when you first look at it. And second time look at it, it's still a cool piece, but it has a lot of issues which we see in a lot of creatures, specifically for sculpting, is in the way that the texturing here is really solid. There's a lot of really cool details here on top of everything and nice colors. I really like the gradient going on here. The design is also quite cool. But then if we were to look a bit closer on this, let's say we have removed all the color from this, and we're seeing here that we are really missing mid-frequency. The way I believe this is done is a map from Surface Mimic, and it's been tiled across, maybe fixed the seams, whatever it might have been done, and then just kind of left the lower frequencies, like the mid and lower frequencies. This is the way I've been doing it before, where you can tile something across really quickly and get this incredible detail right away. But what's so important is the sculpture needs to work without any of this very fine and really lovely detail.
Yeah, like if you take this map off, if you had a render of this without the map on, you would immediately be able to see how much it's actually lacking. One of the things that stands out to me here is like I like the transition that he has. Like he has this lat that goes into the delt kind of on the front leg thing, right? But then it becomes very cylindrical. It's just a cylinder with a little bit of muscle definition. Whereas maybe for the pose like that, you would want to, emphasize maybe more on his triceps, just to get a little bit of muscular definition in there. Have the elbow poke out, so it's not just this round thing. Maybe like actually create like some crease points and some sharp points to have some definition in the sculpt.
The most interesting area for me in this entire sculpt is really this region here, the shoulder and this stuff here. And that's a shame, because I really prefer when this is the most important area, when you can really see the face being nicely detailed. And you can see here the face is lacking a lot of, not necessarily resolution, but in terms of definition. You can't see the eyelids going around it, and it's very hard to really see anything here. It really looks like trying to hide an anatomy in very high frequency stuff.
But also, one of the things I like about the face here is the fact that it shows the difference between what happens when you have a lot of textures, like let's say the surface mimic texture on the body, which helps to hide some of the missing mid frequency, right? And you compare it to the face, where you actually don't have that amount of detail. That's when the mistakes sort of start to come out. And there's some fleshy feeling in the face for sure, but we're really missing some of that volume buildup between shapes.
This creature here is a perfect example of pieces which would probably go through the first round of recruitment in the studios, where the recruiters will look at this and they're going to be like, man, this is a tight piece, because it's very detailed and it has a lot of variation in that. And then they're showing this to a supervisor or a lead or somebody like that who has hands-on knowledge, and they're going to be like, yeah, actually, you're missing a lot of underlying fundamentals. I've seen this as well, where I've been doing exactly that, where I wouldn't necessarily hire somebody with this kind of character, just because I know that it's a lot easier to teach somebody with strong fundamentals how to do the fine frequency here than to teach somebody with than to do the opposite.
Basically, what I'm missing is the amount of, again, think about this as if you take away all the little blisters and all the surface detail, right? The detail level that's there in the shoulder area up to the lats, that's what I'm expecting to see everywhere. Even the creasing on the back leg there where it's bent, it's like the buildup of muscle and the buildup of fat isn't really there. It feels a little soft. The cool thing is, though, like the presentation is there. Everything
Absolutely.
is presented well. The textures are really cool. I like the combination of colors. You've got contrast colors there with the reds and the greens and the sort of gradient to blue. So let's, in quotation marks, all that needs to be done in order to fix this is introduce some mid-frequency detail. And then you can still keep the map. You can still keep the map of the detail that goes on top. But having that, just a few hours of sculpting on top of this thing, just over everything, would really elevate this piece to the next level.
What's tricky about this is that an experienced sculptor can take this to the next level in a few hours, but if you don't know how to do that, that's going to take a long time to learn how to do. And that is just unfortunately just time consuming. There's also some UV stretching here, I believe. Looks like the UVs are a little bit stretched. And this shot here in particular, I wouldn't include because here you can see that there's a lot of, the textures are getting very blurry. I'm not sure how this is done, but it looks like a lot of the detailing here has been done in maybe Mari or ZBrush, and then it's poly painted up here, and it's tied to the poly resolution instead of the texture maps. It looks very much like a cavity map created, which is just thrown in here and made green instead of really working up the details. So I would kill this shot here entirely, and the reason is just because now you can kind of see where it breaks down. It looks much better from the other angles, so you might as well just do yourself a favor and just not expose your weaknesses.
Yeah, it's kind of like that's what you got to consider when you're presenting something, right? Most people that make something for their portfolio, obviously they're trying to get a job, and so you want to present it in the best possible way. And showing things, I mean, obviously it's not intentional having the guy wanting to show this, and I think he wants to show the detail level that he's tried to create. But in reality, because it's actually kind of lacking there, it unfortunately shows the opposite, where you would probably expect something a little bit sharper and a little more crisp there.
Yeah, I would really prefer if all of these scales were completely separate, and you couldn't see these like individual polygons or pixels. That would do a lot for me.
But I mean, overall, it's really tight. There's a lot of good things there. For me, the biggest thing there is working in that mid frequency, getting that up to date, and starting to work on that. If you can do that, then for a piece like that would be super solid.
Yeah, this is something we've been talking about before, that probably the best way you can improve your texturing is to improve your sculpting. Then everything is just a lot easier to work with.
Texturing is kind of free if the underlying frequency is sort of already sorted.
One quick thing you can do as well, maybe quick thing, is posing the character a little. Right now it's a completely symmetrical character, so if you can just do a little bit of posing, that can go a long way.
I would kind of pose this sneakily, because it's already like kind of hunched over, like get it down maybe like a cat or something.
Yeah, that would be cool.
A weird cat.
I would also like to see something more, maybe more like this as well, but like properly posed, where you get some personality in it. That's gonna do a lot.
But looking at it from this angle, again, it's one of those shots where you start to, it's like looking behind the curtain, right? The magician reveals his secrets. You see it actually here from the front. That's where it kind of starts to fall apart again, because a lot of attention has been put into the profile view and the side view, especially there in the shoulder and the lat area. But the face itself, again, especially from the front, is very, very soft, and like you pointed out, like you can't really see the definition of the eyelids either, so it doesn't feel as well integrated, and not as much time has been spent on the face. At least that's what it looks like.
I would also break up the symmetry a little as well. It looks like it's symmetrical in terms of the texturing here. It's a bit hard to tell because the spec breaks it up, but just like a little bit of breakup here can do a lot of things, both in terms of sculpting and in terms of the texturing.
Especially when you have such a symmetrical shape that goes from the eyebrow and then down into the center line. That's where where the nose forms. That and I would say also like fixing the mouth area. Right now it looks like it's just a hole into the face. Either closing the mouth or getting some teeth in there, having a nose or like a tongue stick out or something could help that as well.
So yeah, that's what we would do with this piece. Overall, pretty solid stuff, and we think this can help. And also, if somebody's looking at this, watching this video, and you have similar creatures, most likely it's the sculpting which is lacking, and not necessarily the texturing. Then we have a similar piece, which is a Stegosaurus. I thought this was a really cool piece as well, because this has some of the same issues as the other one. This here is kind of what the last piece would look like if you remove the texturing, I believe. One of the things which works really well here is the overall shape of it is generally there. The silhouette is mostly there, and it's a pretty nice sculpt. I really like the spikes going out of this, and generally it's a pretty good job. Topology seems to be pretty decent. UVs are there, So it looks to be like a mobile asset or a game asset or something like that. But what I would do, regardless of if this is going to be used for mobile or whatever it is, I would refine the anatomy a bit more. It looks a bit like one of the toys from the 1980s, where you can articulate the joints here. So it looks a bit like this is kind of the point of articulation, same as this here as well. So I would really go back and really try to work in the anatomy when it comes to this.
Yeah, here I would probably like take a look at some real reference from like not dinosaurs, elephants, just because of the massive weight. Like how does the muscle and the fat sit around the joints for elephants? Like figuring that out. The same thing with how the pads or the feet sort of meet the ground. Maybe you want to emphasize, the fact that it's a heavy dinosaur and that squeezes down those pads. But also, like Kenny said, I feel like this is almost like in between the previous one and where you would want to get to in terms of mid-frequency. But this one obviously is then missing the high-frequency detail. There's a lot of that missing.
Yeah, there's a little bit of high frequency here, it seems, but I would really do more of that. Instead of just a hint, I would really like to see this frequency all over the place.
Yeah.
But what the danger when you start to add this all over the place is that it is now all over the place. What you really want to do, you want to make sure it blends in with the details. For instance, if you have the high frequency going across here, you don't want necessarily to go across this region here. So a really big thing when you're doing high frequency is where do you avoid the high frequency, or where do you blend it down so you can barely see it? Another useful reference here as well, I think, would be looking at a hippo or a rhino as well, because it's so tricky to find reference for this, and good luck trying to find good anatomical dinosaur reference. That is just very hard to do, at least compared to the animals we have. Even if you can't find that reference, I tend to use a lot is like lion reference, just because there is one anatomy book in the world for animals, and that has a really good lion as well. But obviously you want to conform that heavily to something like this.
I think one of the major issues that I sort of see here is, especially when you look at the lower legs, like this part there and like this part here, is how something that we've talked about a lot, how the detail is kind of drawn in on the shape. It's not necessarily sculpted. Like I don't feel a lot of form there. It's kind of like just skin striation instead of trying to build up the actual volume of the shapes, going across the shape, not going with the shape, what we try to teach all the time.
It's such a tricky one to understand as well, because you just have to, it's like one of these, we say it, or you have to sculpt it in and not draw in there. Like, what does that mean? Well, it's a tricky one to explain.
I feel like it works kind of well on the rear leg there, on the top half of the rear leg. You get more fleshy feel there, like it feels like there's weight to the skin there, whereas on the lower leg I'm kind of missing that weight feel.
The texturing also, I don't think texturing holds up super well either for this. It looks...
It actually kind of looks like a toy.
Yeah.
In a way, like it's textured as a toy.
Yeah.
Kind of like how you would paint Warhammer figurines, how you do the grime and like get the grime into the little crevices and stuff. So it has that toy feel. I'm not sure if that is the intent or not, but like we're kind of coming at this from a more, I guess, naturalistic perspective.
Yeah, I'm assuming that the intent here is to make a realistic looking dinosaur, but it looks like it's made out of wood.
Yeah,
like, because
exactly.
You have these areas here, the areas of where it goes up. It looks like a cavity map might have been made or been used for this and inverted, or maybe a curvature map. Yeah, probably a curvature map for this. And it looks like you wouldn't really see this in nature. Like it's the way it looks to me is you have a wooden figure which has been painted, and now you've been scratching it off over like 20 years. It's like an old wooden chair which once used to be green, but now all of it has been removed over time. So I prefer to not really use a whole lot of cavity maps when it comes to this, or curvature maps. I really prefer to control this properly in a non-procedural way.
It's also interesting how, compared to the last piece where we talked about posing it, right? Getting that more agile cat pose in there. As Stegosaurus, kind of like what we talked about with the cows and cats, like how you got to think about what kind of creature it is. Even though this is posed, it's really hard to make an interesting pose for a dinosaur like this, just because it's so rigid and box-like. I like that it is posed, that there's something happening in it, but it is really hard to make that pose a lot more interesting than this.
What I really like to think about when I'm doing characters like this, I like to think about it as one cohesive unit. And this here feels a bit like it's a very modular piece. If we go down here, it feels like here is the foot part, and here is the forearm part, and then we have the joint part and the upper arm part, and here we have the bottom belly part and the top part and all the different spikes, instead of really considering it to be one cohesive piece where everything goes together. This is hard to do for sure. It is genuinely tricky to get this to look right, but I think one of the things which is missing here is really looking at real world reference. If you're doing something like this for texturing, like Komodo dragons, lizard are great, unless you're going for a feathered version of it, then they're terrible. But particularly something like that, then you can really see what it probably would look like, or maybe a crocodile's as well.
Also, just because like the way that the skin is made, like again, unless it's the feathered version of it, right? You kind of get a little bit of it here with some of the skin detail, but it's more like slapped on in different areas instead of like propagating it across the entire model.
Yeah, but overall pretty cool piece. One thing I would say just for pure presentation is I really prefer it when I'm reviewing particular textures like this, where the lighting isn't this dark, where the shadows aren't this dark. I prefer to light it with an HDRI, or I don't know what Sketchfab actually allows you to do, but at least where the shadows aren't this dark, because it is just genuinely pretty hard to evaluate what this model looks like. It's very hard to see in here what the model looks like here, because it's so black.
Yeah, I think like with Sketchfab you might be able to show like just albedo as well, just like as an option there.
Yeah, but yeah, a few quick notes here. I would refine the anatomy a bit more, really get in where the bone and landmarks are, where the scapula is, rib cage, maybe where the elbow is. It really resolve areas around the foot, make sure they all read, and then don't treat it as a painting job in I assume this is done in it's done in Substance Painter. Don't treat it as a painting job where you're just hand painting this and mixing curvature, cavity, AO together, but really observe the reference and do what and work from there. A good reference here is Damien, who I used to work with at NPC. You can find him on Instagram, and on ArtStation, just DAMZ, Dams. And he has some amazing characters made in Substance Painter and ZBrush as well, like this. But yeah, pretty cool character. We just thought we would give some quick notes to these two artists. Kind of similar notes, so we figured we would put them in the same video. Overall, make sure to treat it as one cohesive unit here. Make sure you have all the high frequency as well. And for this guy, make sure you have the mid frequency really right before you do all this crazy stuff. If you were to combine these two, the level of cohesiveness for this guy here with the level of mid frequency with this guy here, you would end up with a pretty decent creature at the end. So thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more portfolio videos like this in the future, or a chance to have your own portfolio reviewed, let us know in the comments. Make sure to subscribe, like, and hit the little notification bell.
If you're looking for training or high quality assets, make sure to stop by the FlippedNormals marketplace. And if you're interested in supporting us by buying our merchandise, you can check that out in the description below.